If you want to spray, we want to say.
Another round of mosquito spraying today on Miami Beach as the Zika zone there triples in size. Bad news for residents and tourists.
Clearly, people know there's an issue, but there's a lot of politics up here.
The governor goes to Washington for Zika funding, but comes back empty-handed and angry.
We're also going to stand with the Cuban people in their fight against communist oppression.
Donald Trump comes to town with a stump speech tailored for South Florida, and guess what? He's anti-Castro.
Good morning. Welcome. So glad to have you with us this morning. We begin with the fear, the fight, the funding, and the politics of the viral Zika emergency now spreading in South Florida.
The confirmed cases continue to spiral up by the day, and so do the questions. The state health department tripled the size of the Miami Beach infection zone on Friday night after 5 new cases of locally acquired Zika on the beach were confirmed altogether. Now there are 93 people we know of who have contracted Zika locally. Just a few hours ago, Miami-Dade County conducted the latest round of aerial spraying to kill the mosquitoes that carry the Zika virus. Many Miami Beach residents are up in arms, opposed to the aerial spraying with the pesticide Naled. They say it's harmful to humans as well as to birds, bees, ornamental fish. That is just one of the issues we're going to address with our guest in this coming hour.
And we begin with the latest on the funding and or lack thereof with Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen in Miami, who with the rest of Florida's congressional delegation has lobbied for money and hosted Governor Rick Scott in Washington this week. Good morning, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much, Glenna. Thank you, Michael.
Congresswoman, great to have you come in. So here's the simple question. All 27 House members from Florida, you and your colleagues, Democrats, Republicans, Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Bill Nelson, Republican, Democrat, everybody is speaking with one voice, but you still can't get Congress to pass this bill. Why not?
Shame on us. I know. Well, that is the good news. The good news is that we're united, bipartisan, in seeing Zika as a threat to public safety and a real problem and a crisis and an emergency. The bad news is that's 29 of us out of 535. The other members of Congress and the other senators see Zika as a problem, as they saw Ebola as a problem,
but do they see
not
it as
an immediate threat.
A local problem?
No, it's as if a hurricane had hit Florida and everybody knows, okay, we need to get you disaster funding, but they're not really riled up about it. Look at how long it took us to get help for the New York, New Jersey area, mostly after Hurricane Sandy. So we have got to keep working, and we will, united with one voice, saying we need to pass a bill with no policy riders, none of those poison pills, none of whatever pet projects you want, and give the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, the money that they want and that they need. We've been robbing them of this and that. Right. Now Zika is coming, boom, against another battle up in D.C., which is the September 30th fiscal budget deadline.
So what we reported on this week was, and it's kind of in the weeds, a CR, a continuing resolution. When you say that on TV, it's eyes water. But that is the glaze over. But that's the continuing government emergency spending bill into which this Zika funding is going, not going? Where do we stand?
That's it. That's exactly it, Glenna. We first hoped and worked for a standalone Zika bill with the president's full funding of $1.9 billion. That left, and we were not able to get it. Now we have a continuing resolution, which is a stopgap funding measure that gets us to a certain point in time, this time December 9th, to when we go back in session and try to pass a longer bill. So Zika will be included in the continuing resolution. That sounds like good news.
For sure.
It has to. We have to fund the government. We cannot shut down the government. We've done that before. It's been horrible. We can't afford to do it. Zika will be included. Maybe it'll be $1.1 billion. But the problem is that Congress is working in such a not working. It's so dysfunctional that we look at deadlines and we say, oh, September 30th. We don't need to get it done till September 30th. And that's the problem we're facing. We're hoping that this is the week when we will get a CR out of the Senate, because the Senate goes first, and then we will pass it in the House. We will work toward that goal.
Now, we have just been seeing some video on the screen of you, your fellow members of the House, and I think Senator Bill Nelson was at that news conference as well, where you all came together this week. You were hosting Governor Rick Scott. I don't want to sound partisan here, but there was unanimity in the Florida congressional delegation, and Governor Scott shows up and he really politicizes what had been depoliticized.
Well, that is true. I don't think that the governor understands that in our South Florida congressional delegation especially, we work together. Democrats, Republicans, House and the Senate, we don't throw stones at each other. That's not the way to get things done. And so in a moment, a press conference where we're talking about we're going to hold hands and keep fighting for Zika funding, he starts saying, I'm deeply ashamed and embarrassed, and how could Senator Nelson do this or that? And I said, Governor, this is not the time to call anybody out.
You kind of took him to task on that.
You know,
politely and diplomatically, I will say.
And this is just not the time. A pox on all of our houses for not getting the job done. We accept responsibility, but let's get it done. And the way to get it done is not to clobber each other's heads. This is a collegial body. We need to work together, and we need to replenish the coffers of the CDC.
Yeah, they run out of money at the end of the month.
It's shocking, it's alarming, and it's depressing that we haven't done our job. It's not too late. We need to do it, and we hope that this is the week.
So the onus now really is on the Senate and House leaders, Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. And, you know, as a member of that party, are they playing politics with this?
We have told Speaker Ryan and Mitch McConnell directly, personally, through letters, press conferences, any which way, smoke signals. This is important to the United States of America. This is important to the whole health situation of our hemisphere. It's not going to go away. And the CDC is such an important part of our healthcare system, along with the National Institutes of Health. We've got to replenish those funds, and we've got to pay back local and state governments.
Right.
And Marco's got a good bill to help small businesses that have been impacted by Zika closures.
Before we run out of our time for this segment, we're so glad you're here, I want to bring up the subject of Donald Trump. On Friday night, I was covering his speech at this rally, and as you know, at that rally, he said, how many Cubans are here? There were quite a few, kind of surprisingly a lot, in my view. And he said, essentially, I totally oppose the deal, the policy of the Obama administration. I would have made a better deal. And I would never do business with the Castro government so long as there are political prisoners and no human rights. That's essentially your point of view. So is that going to bring you around? Because you're on record as not supporting Trump.
That's right. I'm not supporting the Democratic nominee, nor am I supporting the Republican nominee for president. I'm going to write in Jeb Bush. He was always my #1 choice. Yes, it's true. The plight of the Cuban people and their suffering is real, and it's serious. But the issue here, Michael and Glenna, is a consistency. This is the point of view now. A few months ago, the point of view was that it was a good deal.
Right.
The Iran deal now is not good, but a few months ago, it was a good deal, and he could have gotten a better deal. So what will be the policy next month and the month after that? So that's what I think that people will have to gauge, and I am very much at ease in my conscience in voting for the best man I think could be president and one day hope to be, and that is Jeb Bush. But let everyone decide for themselves. I'm not campaigning for or against anyone, and let's make sure that we remember that on that ballot there are a lot of other important issues.
The down ballot races.
The down ballot.
And you're
Marco
one of them.
Rubio is one of them. I'm one of them, but whatever you do in my race, whatever, but they're also further down the line. It's an important election, and the presidential is not the only ones. And Congress has a real role, whoever the new president is, in oversight responsibilities. So let's not forget that.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Glenna.
Great
See
to
you in
have
the D.C. hallways again.
Very soon.
Thank you,
Always
Michael.
great to have you come
Thank
in.
you.
Thank you so
Right.
much.
When we come back, we're going to turn to a veteran medical doctor and a veteran medical reporter to sort out some truth from the myths about Zika that you've been hearing and discuss the level of danger posed by the chemicals being used to kill mosquitoes. So stay with us. This week, the Florida Department of Health found itself on the defensive against allegations it was withholding critical information about the spread of Zika among residents and among visitors.
And on Miami Beach, the protests mounted against aerial spraying to exterminate mosquitoes, even as the number of locally acquired cases is on the rise. Let's look at that all with our guests. They are Dr. Naresh Kumar, Professor of Public Health and Environmental Science at the University of Miami School of Medicine. Miller School of Medicine.
Daniel Chang is a health beat reporter with the Miami Herald who is leading that paper's coverage on Zika. The Herald sued the state late this week over its withholding from the public the precise locations of Zika transmissions. We'll talk all about that. Good morning. Good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you
Good
so
morning,
much for
Glad
being here with us.
to have you here, Doctor, and Dan. Great to have you.
Glad to be here.
Should we be, Doctor, alarmed at the continuing spiraling number of Zika cases that we see? I mean, on Friday, 5 new cases confirmed on Miami Beach. I mean, how is this a public health emergency?
Well, yes, it's a public health emergency in this sense. Zika virus has been in Brazil for a long time now. We knew that Miami is gateway to America, and it will be spreading up north as well. So we should be very concerned about it, because the way transmission works, if you or a patient is infected and a mosquito are biting them, so those mosquitoes are infecting and they will bite another one, and that's the cycle of transmission of this disease, like any other vector-borne disease. So it should be a very big concern to begin with.
And you know, one of the biggest concerns, and you address this, Dan, in your article, is that the lag time for the public finding out not only how many are being infected, but where the actual infections are. I mean, the Miami Beach cases, the new cases, were acquired Labor Day weekend, so it's been 2 weeks. Yesterday we found, or Friday we find out. So, I mean, right now there might be infections that we don't know about yet. What have you found in your reporting? Why is there that lag time?
I think that ever since the governor mandated free Zika testing for all pregnant women, according to the physicians we've spoken with, there has been a huge spike in demand. And I think it's difficult for the state to keep up with that demand. You know, the tests themselves also require some turnaround time. Now, typically, there are at least 2 tests that Florida will perform. And one of them is called it's the PCR test. It will detect the active virus in your body within up to 12 days after your onset of symptoms. And that one takes 2 to 3 days to turn around. But people are waiting weeks for that one as well.
Weeks?
Yes. And then the other one is the serologic, or the blood test, which will detect your body's immune response, because you'll develop antibodies to it. And that one can take up to 3 weeks. But people are waiting as long as 5 weeks for results. And it's largely
about
because
pregnant women. And you wrote, I thought the other day, a really powerful piece citing some instances where women who are pregnant, who are terribly worried that they may be infected with Zika, have gone 5-6 weeks waiting for the results. I mean, that's really unacceptable.
Yes, I mean, pregnancy is a stressful enough time from what women and doctors tell us, and to have to wait on a important piece of information that may affect your decision whether or not to carry on that pregnancy is got to be unbearable. And look, I mean, you know, the governor last week announced that he's going to devote an extra $10 million. So now there's $36.2 million in state funds that he's dedicated in part to help with speed up testing, in addition to pay for spraying and all the other efforts that we put on. But I think that until we come up with perhaps a better diagnostic, which is really not in the state's hands, it's going to be hard to turn those tests around much faster.
You know, you bring up spraying, so let's talk about spraying a little bit. Doctor, there's a huge outcry over the NALED spraying, the aerial spraying. And I want to hear, you know, we're going to assume you have a fairly objective scientific opinion on this, because the passions are on both sides.
Right.
What is NALED in the form and the way it's being used in Dade County? Does that pose a danger? And if so, part 2 of my question, what is the risk and reward? Which danger is worse, Zika or NALED?
To begin with, let me explain to you about this chemical. This is one of the organophosphate class of chemicals. It does not stay in the environment as long as DDT used to be. We banned those chemicals in 1970. Now, these kinds of chemicals can stay in the environment up to 7 days. However, with regard to the aerial sprays, a small fraction of the or NALED can be also airborne, latch upon the water vapors, and that can stay airborne up to 3 to 5 days, given the lifespan of aerosol is about 5 days. So with regard to the cost and benefit, answering your second question, do you want to take a baby with anencephaly, or you want to just eliminate some of the mosquitoes for the time being?
But is that dangerous too? Is the NALED pose its own dangers?
Right. It's dangerous in the sense that when people are inhaling NALED or NALED fall on the skin, it can lead to irritation, and people who have asthma and allergy, their asthma may flare up. So those are the side risk for other health effects. But nonetheless, those effects will not be long-term as bad as anencephaly.
The European Union banned the use a couple of years ago of NALED. Apparently, scientists there in Europe believe that the downside outweighs the upside.
Well, that's very true. But with regard to the dangerous class of this chemical, this is banned because its scale is 6.1 in the environmental toxicants, and that's why they are banned. They have also banned genetically modified organisms too. So they take a more proactive approach than what we take in the United States. We have a problem, then we begin to deal with this, and anything that comes on our way, we try to tackle this problem then and there itself.
Dan.
I've heard a lot of skepticism too from folks, especially in Miami Beach, where they've had these very well-attended commission meetings of people sort of denying, if you will, that Zika causes microcephaly, or saying that there isn't enough proof, and they hang on to that doubt as though it were almost some sort of certainty, and I think that's dangerous, because over this weekend I heard that there was yet more scientific evidence linking Zika to microcephaly and other negative outcomes that may not be apparent. I mean, we've written about newborns with calcification in the brain, scarring in the retina. This is a virus that attacks all brain tissue. So it's not just microcephaly, right, doctor? I mean, there's a lot of other conditions that will probably require more intensive follow-up care after the child is born, and perhaps even through their lifetime.
Exactly. I mean, so these are very long-term effects, and these are some of the symptoms that we are seeing. So we fully do not know what are the long-term effects of the Zika virus.
One more question about NALED, if I may. According to the county administration, NALED has been used in mosquito control in Miami-Dade County for 40 years. To your knowledge, has anybody ever presented with any kind of adverse effect, had disease, had a chronic condition from NALED use for the last few decades at all?
Now, one of the major challenges that we face with regard to environmental health, in this case NALED, when you are exposed to NALED chronically, is likely to have certain symptoms related to neurodegeneration, like Alzheimer and other disease, but that's a long-term effect, and the concentration...
That's repeated exposure to
Like, for example, people who chronically spray NALED and other pesticides and do not use the mask, then there's a problem. But given the short span of NALED, it's not likely to have long-term chronic effect. However, as I was saying, these have short-term effects. The effects for the communities with regard to aerial sprays are as much as the effect that you might see after the pest control in your home. As you might see some kind of inflammation, irritation, if you don't leave the home after the spray in your home.
Understood.
Dan, you have attended these meetings on Miami Beach where a number of people have come out. They're very angry, very concerned. And of course, they point out that in Broward County, where they're going to be, I think they started this weekend, did they not spraying? But they are not using NALED. They're using some other pesticide that apparently doesn't have some of the toxic effects. Is that right?
Yeah,
go ahead, Dr.
VTI is called Bacillus thuringiensis. It's one of the bacteria that lives in caterpillar's gut. So they have taken and extracted that bacteria to generate a pesticide that creates a toxin crystal structure. So when pests consume it, it bursts open them. And
but that's just a larvicide, right? That kills the eggs. It doesn't kill the adults.
Exactly.
The naled kills the adults, and that's what they had been doing in Wynwood, which, by the way, tomorrow the governor is going to be in town announcing that there's no more Zika in Wynwood. But essentially,
claiming a good deal of credit in the process, like politicians do.
Right.
Yes, and certainly it's been a team effort, if you will, between the state, the county, the CDC, who also has people on the ground, and now we'll be sending more reinforcements to help speed up some of that Zika testing, but also to help advise on the mosquitoes and the best way to stop them. And what's worked in Wynwood, what's unfortunate is that it doesn't seem to be the same environment where they can apply the naled effectively with the larvicide to kill the adults and the eggs. And
but you see, of course, this is a short-term solution. Of course, we need to deal with the mosquitoes that are infected. These mosquitoes will come again. And this disease is not handled as vigorously as we are trying to handle in Miami, in Latin American countries. They are not putting that much type of effort and resources in dealing with this disease.
Well, we have more resources, but until Congress funds a Zika bill, we don't have enough resources. Dr. Kumar, thank you very much. And Dan Chang, great to see you. Good reporting on this in the Miami Herald.
Thank you.
After the break, we take this and so much more to the Powerhouse Roundtable. Stay tuned and weigh in. We're having fun already. It's time to take a closer, more analytical look at the week's top news stories with our Powerhouse Roundtable. And as always, we have a good one for you.
Boy, do we ever. Jackie Charles is a reporter with the Miami Herald, mainly covers Haiti and the Caribbean, as well as South Florida news. Ed Pizzoli is an attorney at the Tripp Scott Law Firm in Fort Lauderdale. Not only that, he is the president of that very fine law firm. He's an activist in the Republican Party. And Dan Gelber, we're glad to welcome Dan as former state lawmaker from Miami Beach, now an attorney in private practice in Miami and an active Democrat. To all of you, great to have you come in. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Luis, let's start with Zika because as a former state legislator, the Zika zone is now yours professionally and personally, and you listened to the discussion we had. What's your take on how the process is going in fighting this public health emergency?
Well, first of all, we both live in the Zika zone, and my daughter goes to school in the heart of the Zika zone. So it's very personal, and I think the one thing that's important here is this is a political roundtable, but I think it's terrible to politicize this issue in any way. And I think to a pretty good extent, most of the folks dealing with it have swayed away from that. I credit the Miami Beach City Commission and the mayor for trying to rely on medicine and science. Nobody's a toxicologist who's on that commission. Nobody is an epidemiologist who's on it, and they're trying to get the best information available. But whatever they do is going to be unpopular. So I think that's all they can do.
Yeah, it has been fairly political because not only on the Miami Beach dais, but now there's a coalition of people on the beach really fighting the spraying and fearful of the spraying.
Listen, the cure, the question is the cure worse than the disease? But I think if you're not an expert, you got to rely on expertise, and they are trying their hardest to do that. Yeah, they've used
to rely on science. Ed Pizzoli, you heard even the estimable Ileana Ros-Layton and say, yeah, Rick Scott may have been a little bit too political when he came up to Washington. Did, in fact, the governor politicize something that had been depoliticized?
I don't know if it was depoliticized because we still don't have funding coming out of Washington.
That's true. So
let's set aside the politics of this. This is about protecting pregnant women and their babies. And so at the end of the day, let's get the funding down, because right now most of that burden has been with the state and local governments, and they are stepping up because, Michael, you probably heard maybe next week Wynwood is going to be hopefully taken out of the zone. So whatever they have done so far is working. The question is, it's now the zone is expanded to north, almost all of Miami Beach, and we all have a stake in this, and it has nothing to do. I agree with Dan on this. This has nothing to do with politics. Get the funding. Let's get this problem resolved.
Right, and the economic impact here could be monumental. Yeah. When you think about all of Miami Beach, it was bad enough when it was South Beach. Now it's the entire beach.
Starting already. reporting from the hotels this week, starting already.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Jackie, you're the Caribbean beat reporter. I mean, Zika has been in the Caribbean.
It has been in the Caribbean, and in fact, I wrote a story earlier this year about how it was in Haiti in 2014. So even before it was confirmed out of Brazil, it was already there. And in the Caribbean, we're seeing the impact. There was already a concern about chikungunya, which came before Zika, and dengue, and now you're dealing with the Zika issue. But I will have to tell you, in the Caribbean, they do not recommend spraying. The experts, they say they do not spray because they do not feel that it has more of an impact other than psychological. So there's a very interesting debate. Even in Puerto Rico, there was huge protests in Puerto Rico against spraying, where participants did not allow that to happen.
Yeah, but now there are 20,000 infected people in, I mean, it is epidemic
in Puerto Rico.
Yes,
Puerto
it is.
Rico.
It is.
It's a terrible situation. And also locally, it is being politicized. I got an email from the Raquel Regalado campaign yesterday in which, she says, Mayor Jimenez, Carlos Jimenez of Miami-Dade County, who has worked closely with the state health department and supports aerial spraying, she says he's wrong. They shouldn't be doing this. So Dan, I mean, it
shouldn't be a political issue. It's a science and medicine issue, and that's all it is. And people get very upset, and they should be upset because it affects their children and their families. But at the end of the day, that's what it has to be. I don't like the politicizing of it because I think that makes it a harder decision to be validly made and to rely on the metrics of science. So look, I think Regalado is making it too political. I think the Miami Beach City Commission is trying to keep it pretty staid and science-based. And at the end of the day, that's the only way we can do the right thing, because whatever they do, they're going to be criticized. If they stop all spraying and they stop treating it,
they'll be criticized for that.
They'll be criticized for that.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can, let's move on to the presidential race, because Donald Trump, as we all know, was in Miami on Friday afternoon and Friday evening. In fact, Glenna, you and Jackie were covering his stop at the Little Haiti Cultural Center. I want to hear about your views on that. But on Friday night at the rally, he said, I spent the entire afternoon in Little Haiti. Well, it was more like
22 minutes.
22 minutes.
23.
And he said, oh, those Haitian people, oh, I felt the love. They're such incredible people. Aside from expressing love, he didn't say what he would do for Haiti as president. But what about that visit? What did you think?
It was very much an anti-Clinton feel in that room. I think for Haitians who were there, some of them were just curious. But for a lot of them in this election, it's really a protest vote against the Clintons. It's a personal vote. People were telling me in 1994 they were in Haiti when, Aristide was returned and they didn't agree with Bill Clinton's policy. He was then the president. But yes, in that room, he said he came to listen and he wanted to be their greatest champion. He did not raise the issue about immigration, which is very close to Haitians' hearts. He talked about school choice. He says that he agreed with it. But that was basically it. A lot of people just sort of grandstanding. I think the Haitian community really missed a real opportunity to ask him, what are you going to do for Haiti? What is your foreign policy regarding Haiti, and how is that policy different from the Obama administration
and economic support? Yeah.
Can I just throw in that there were very few local Haitian Americans there. I think it was organized out of the Palm Beach GOP and they invited guests. I didn't actually find one local person, which isn't to say there weren't any, just I couldn't find them. But most of the people we spoke with were from Palm Beach or somewhere else. And but they, to your point, immigration is a question that they can't really address other than saying something like, well, that's what Donald Trump says now, but no, it's going to be fine. Ed.
Well, look, this visit actually is historic in that it brings to light something that we know in South Florida about the Haitian community and the Haitian plight, what happened in Haiti. That's very localized. He brings a national attention to it, and I think by his very visit, I think that's very helpful, and I think the community will respond to him. I also agree with you that there is a level of anti-Clinton voters inside of that community, and for some good reasons. There was a lot of money spent in Haiti, and basically many Haitians are disappointed in the level of what was actually accomplished. And so what you have is a lot of money being thrown at Haiti with little accomplishment, and that's what the Haitian people are concerned about, and they do blame the Clintons in part for that. And some of it may be legitimate, and so that's what you're seeing here.
Yeah. Dan Gilbert, in his speech on Friday night, and he's fascinating, he's a great showman, he's charismatic. He, of course, says things that are totally off the wall, like there are some cities in this country where black people live in the inner cities that are as dangerous as Afghanistan. I don't know how you would ever prove anything like that. But he reached out once again to African American voters and said, I will do better for you than historically Democrats have done or Hillary Clinton can he sell that argument?
Well, listen, the thing about Donald Trump, and I have a very dim view of Trump. I think he's a bit of a, I agree with Marco and Jeb and other folks who have said he's really sort of a con artist, that he will say anything with the certainty that he believes it, even though it's not true. I have no idea what he has said to the African American community that would make them think he has any interest in helping them. And I've listened
He says the president was born in the United States.
Well, yeah.
Said that Friday morning.
That's right. That may be the first accommodation he has made, but the truth of the matter is if you listen to thoughtful African-American voices, they really believe he perpetuates exactly the wrong kind of stereotypes that the African-American community is totally homogeneous, that it's only one type, and that he sort of reveals and betrays an absolute failure to understand who they are. And I don't know why anyone in a community that is really would like some help in something would turn to Donald Trump, who makes no offer of anything specific anywhere about anything. It's really just sort of, you feel like it's a scam. You feel like it's Trump University, and he's offering them to be great again. All they have to do is vote for him.
All right, we're going to get a response here from
I don't know why. I think he agrees with me.
Charles says there is one coming, but we're going to get it after a short break, so stay with us.
Keep the passion.
You got to work for my vote.
We are back with the roundtable. Actually, we never stopped to begin with, but we're talking about Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and communities of color. Ed, we should have just come out to you because it's your turn to answer.
Look, it is about, we talked during the commercial break about being taken for granted, and I think voters of color have been taken for granted. As you know, Dan makes a good point. They're homogeneous to Democrats. They look all the same. They act the same. They vote the same way. They've been taken for granted for some 40 years, and where has that gotten them? So what we have is Donald Trump came to the Haitian community in good faith, came to discuss issues of importance to them. He went to Detroit. He went to a black church. I thought gave a great presentation and speech there, made some inroads, and more importantly, he has become a champion of school choice. And in Dade County alone, some 80% of all of the students that go to like charter schools are minorities. They're children of color, whether they're Hispanic, African American, or Haitian. And so this is an important choice to empower the parents so that they can drive their child's education. One-size-fits-all education is over, and I think that he is supportive of this. That's something that speaks to the future. Last point on that, when we talk about places like Chicago, Democratic liberal policies have destroyed the inner core of that city. You have crime, you have deaths to the extent of 50 or 60 African-American men dying every weekend, and it does not make news. Something has to change. Well, Donald Trump is the change candidate.
Well, it does make news, and it is horrific, and yet I don't know exactly who can be held accountable, but you're right, the Democratic mayors have run that city and that machine for decades. I mean, there's no question
and what
about
has it gotten them? It's gotten them where they are now.
Well,
that's Donald Trump's basic point.
I'm not qualified to talk about Chicago. I can't talk about Miami. And Dan, one of the things that Donald Trump said in Miami on Friday night that frankly, and I'm going to have a commentary later about it, that I found really disturbing was his suggestion that Secret Service agents who guard Hillary Clinton, that they, because she doesn't believe in the Second Amendment, wants to take away your guns, that the guns of her security detail should be removed, should be taken away.
To see what happens.
And see what happens, he said, it could be dangerous.
You cannot treat Donald Trump as a mainstream candidate. And frankly, a lot of Republicans agree with me. Jeb Bush, Ileana Ross-Lehtinen isn't going to vote for him. A Republican congresswoman. I mean, so there's no question, and we keep treating him like he's a mainstream candidate. This is a guy.
He is the candidate of a mainstream
party. But he's not
party.
a mainstream candidate. The alt-right movement has come out of the shadows for this man. And the alt-right is that group that was on Breitbart that are filled with serious, white supremacists, the birther movement. And Donald Trump was the founder of the birther movement. We don't think, the Democrats don't think African Americans are homogeneous. The birther movement does. And he was the leader of that. And this is a man who is reaching out to the worst elements of our society, and they believe he is the wind between underneath their wings. If you listen to David Duke and these other horrible voices that represent the worst of this country. So I think that if anybody wants to know from the African American community what they should do with Donald Trump, just look at who is supporting him and wouldn't even show their face in other elections.
Well, Jackie Charles, let me ask you. I mean, this appeal to African American voters, come on, what have you got to lose?
Exactly, and that's what I want to say is that I think the theme in this election is the fact for African American voters, regardless of whether they're Haitian or they're from someplace else, is the fact that they feel that their vote has been taken for granted by the Democrats. Donald Trump got a lot of kudos in that room for the fact that he came to the Haitian community. Now, what they say is that he is the first presidential candidate to have ever come to that community and to hold a meeting with them.
Is that true?
I believe it is true, at least in recent memory, it is, and it's gone a very long way. President Obama had a couple of fundraisers here with some influential Haitian Americans, but I can't remember the last time a presidential candidate came to this community, sat down with the Haitian community and says, hey, I came here and I want to listen. Now, I think with the Democrats, you have to listen to that and you have to say, hey, you know what black voters think, that we're taking them for granted. We heard this at the very beginning of this election cycle, and some will argue that they've yet to see a real olive branch extended to them to say, here's why we want your vote, here's why we deserve your vote. And I think that if the Democrats don't address that, you're going to have voters either going to stay home or they're going to hold their nose and they're going to vote for Trump.
Ed Pizzoli, a very good piece in the New York Times today, which says that younger voters who like Bernie Sanders, among other people, mainly liked him, but they are falling away from Hillary Clinton. Her numbers are down. After the convention, she was up in Florida by 6, 7 points.
9 points.
9 points, okay. Now, if anything, Donald Trump's ahead by a point or two. Who's going to win Florida?
Well, if you remember, about a month ago, you had me
predicted.
On, and she was 9 points ahead, I think, in the Monmouth poll about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I said, look, let's wait and see. I think this is going to be a lot closer. Florida is still Florida. Dan and I can agree that Florida is going to be close. That's probably one thing we might be able to agree on. But he is now up by 4 points. The key for Donald Trump and what your viewers should look at is the trending of the polls. So you see trending, not just in Florida, but you see it in Ohio, you see it in Colorado, you see it in North Carolina, you see it in Michigan, which now has Donald Trump just 2 points down. So there's a lot of math around this, but you're now beginning to see the potential of him being able to get to 270 electoral votes. I will say to you that I do think Donald Trump wins Florida.
Dan?
Stunned silence around the table.
I said it a month ago.
You did. No, you did.
I don't
but I'm not going to get over.
I'm
not going to get overplayed by today's polls versus last month's polls either.
Let's be. And by the way, it would be silly for us to. We don't know. We know it's going to be close. But these elections tend to be hope versus fear, affection, versus anger, and sometimes hope and affection win, and sometimes fear and anger win. But that's what this election has become, obviously. You just had to listen to Donald Trump's speech accepting his nomination to know what side they're on. And I don't know what's going to win that. But I do know that the group I talked about before is a cohort of voters that aren't on a lot of screens. And I do worry that you're going to get voters who didn't really have anybody speaking to them before coming out. And those aren't African American voters, because I don't think the Democratic Party takes them for granted. They are voters who. But
they've got to come out. They've got to come out in the numbers in 2012. Yes. The same 60% of voters, and if they don't, and if young voters don't come out, Hillary Clinton's in trouble.
I don't know. Young voters do not trust her, and most people don't trust her. And if you ask some viewers in South Florida who came from other places like Venezuela, Cuba, or Brazil, they know what corruption does in government.
That's going to be the final.
Can we pick this up next week?
Thank you all. Really a great discussion. Thanks very much. All right, after the break, a Local 10 investigation. Bob Norman has uncovered new information about what helped a murder suspect and he got before he managed to escape from a courtroom in Broward.
For the last month, Broward law enforcement has been looking into how an inmate escaped from the courthouse during a hearing and in full view.
Well, this week we learned that the inmate planned that breakout on social media, and reportedly he used the cell phone of a corrections officer. Here are the details from Bob Norman.
This guy jumped up from the jury box and started running.
When alleged murderer Deontay Rosales escaped from a courtroom in July, he left behind his jail jumpsuit and handcuffs in a hallway before he bolted out a little-used door.
They're evacuating the building here.
An arrest report said Rosales had a handcuff key during the escape, and now newly obtained search warrant records indicate Rosales used his Facebook account while in jail to help coordinate the escape with co-conspirators. And he may have gotten some help from inside the jail to access that Facebook account. Detective Timothy Metz wrote in the warrant application that during multiple jail calls, Rosales informs people he is speaking with that he occasionally accesses Facebook by using a BSO employee's cell phone to do so.
I think it pretty much reeks of an inside job.
For Rosales' former attorney, Jessica Mashali, the information came as no surprise. She complained before the escape that another client, convicted murderer Israel Granda, obtained numerous cell phones from BSO correctional officers during his incarceration, and that handcuff keys could be bought as well.
Numerous types of contraband that deputies are selling to inmates, including handcuff keys, cell phones, drugs, pornography.
Now, I spoke with Rosales' attorney, Don Williams, today. He said he didn't know if a BSO cell phone was used during the escape. As for Rosales, he remains in the Broward County Jail without bond. In Fort Lauderdale, I'm Bob Norman, Local 10 News.
BSO will not comment on what it calls an active criminal investigation, but does say an internal affairs investigation will follow.
All right, still to come, my personal perspective about Donald Trump's disturbing comments about protecting Hillary Clinton.
Hey there, South Florida. It's been a beautiful day so far on this Sunday, but hot. With all this sunshine we're seeing out of Fort Lauderdale's Tower Cam, you know temperatures are going to be warming up. But now we're still in those 80s, upper 80s that is, but it's expected to continue to warm up, eventually hitting a high of 91 degrees today with a southeast wind that could bring back a few of those storms to the inland areas because that wind will lighten up a bit through the rest of today. As we head into tomorrow, rain chances go up to 40%.
Jennifer, thanks. All right, before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about something Donald Trump said in Miami Friday night that I find disturbing and dangerous. It happened at Trump's campaign rally at the Knight Center. He was blasting Hillary Clinton, saying that she wants to destroy the Second Amendment and take away your guns. Hey, none of that is true, of course, but it is Trump. It's the way he rolls. Then, however, he said this.
I think that her bodyguards should drop all weapons. They should disarm, right? Right? I think they should disarm immediately. What do you think? Yes? Yes. Yeah. Take their guns away. She doesn't want guns. Let's see what happens to her. Take their guns away. Okay? It'll be very dangerous.
Whoa, that is so far over the line. It's indefensible, appalling, and unacceptable. Words have consequences. Words from presidential candidates have big consequences. Trump in August said that Second Amendment people might be able to stop Clinton from appointing judges who would limit gun rights. Now he is saying, let's take away the guns from the Secret Service agents who protect her. What an idiotic thing to say, and every reasonable person should rebuke Trump for saying it. The late Israeli Premier Yitzhak Rabin was murdered by a right-wing religious zealot who was motivated by the same kind of overheated rhetoric. There may be an anti-Clinton zealot out there who heard Trump's remarks and may feel now he is authorized to act on them. We pray that doesn't happen to her or to him. But Trump must stop talking this way. It is dangerous, and it is poisoning the civil discourse in the country at every level. That is my perspective for the week. Hope you have a great Sunday. And remember, the Dolphins are going to win, aren't they? As always, stay informed, get involved.
And weigh in. Here are all the ways you can find us. We'd love to hear from you on any topic you like. email, Twitter, Facebook, pick your poison. We appreciate you being with us, and we will see you again. Have a beautiful Sunday.